Welcome to the Tip TV Master Investor Show. It gives me great pleasure, as always, to introduce the CEO of Master Investor, Mr. Swen Lorenz. Sven, how are you doing?
Hi, Nick.
We haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. What have you been up to?
Yes, I've been to Japan for 2 weeks, and one of the reasons for the trip was to do some research into the robotics market. Our investors and our audience is very interested in robotics. It's obviously an up-and-coming field. And I spent 2 weeks in Japan, and among other things, I stayed in the first robot hotel, a place where you've basically got 144 rooms with only 10 human employees, and everything else is run by robots.
That's scary.
I brought a few clips. Shall we have a look at them?
Let's take a look at some video.
Welcome to Hanel Hotel. Please use touch panel to select your language.
Sven, that looked absolutely fascinating. So what did he teach you? Would you go again?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was very interesting to see that this is not science fiction anymore. You can go to a website now, to Expedia or any hotel website, and book a stay in a hotel that is almost exclusively run by robots. I mean, how extraordinary is that? On a more skeptical note, at the same time, there is nothing like, for example, a bartender robot to whom you could just tell, I want my martini shaken, not stirred. That doesn't exist yet. And on a practical note, in my case, I checked in with my check-in robot, and my name was misspelled by one letter, and that's through the robot, of course, and a human had to intervene. So it's not perfect yet. But what it shows you is that there are companies and entrepreneurs that are really pushing this field forward, and they're being very experimental. They also accept that it's not perfect yet. That's explained to the customers. But this place is constantly, completely booked out. And I think that tells us something about how this entire field is advancing right now.
But is this would you say this is a fad, or do you think this is the next generation?
Well, I met someone who is very deeply immersed in the field. It was the chief technology officer of that hotel, who is heading up an entire robotics group in Japan.
And so he would be an expert, right?
He is definitely an expert. He's basically spent his entire life in the robotics field. And I grabbed him and did a brief interview with him, and I thought we'd have a quick look at something that he told me about.
Let's take a look at the video.
When we started in this hotel 2 years ago, the staff needed to take care of this hotel is 30 people. And it's 1 year later, it reduced to 10 people. Means you can reduce to 20 people. This is to make the this productive. So, and at the same time, this is the first the hotels provided service by robotics. So we now rated by Guinness.
Okay.
Record. Okay. That's the first inspiration we had.
Wow, this is unbelievable stuff. In terms of staffing levels, is somebody going to take my job over?
Well, that's obviously what the British press has always been reporting about in the last couple of months, about this fear and this entire development of humans actually really being replaced by robots. And this hotel shows you that they're going now to having just 6 human employees on the ground for a hotel with 144 rooms. That's a huge operation. And I think we should all be very aware that you have to be contributing something creative or something very human, relationship management. If your job can be automated, then you might have a problem.
Right. Now, in terms of the companies that are going to benefit from this next generation stuff, what are your thoughts there?
Well, the very first one to look at for investors, I think, is actually a Japanese company fitting in with the entire subject. It's called Fanuc. It's one of the world's leading robotics companies.
Fanuc, right?
Yeah, correct. And they used to be very secretive, and then in recent years they got a bit of a shake-up from an American activist investor, and since then they've changed their communication strategy. And you can find an article actually about Fanuc on our website, and I'm not going into valuation now, but I think the one thought or the inspiration that I wanted to put in front of your audience is that this might be something like investing into Google back in 2004, when it was already apparent this is going to be huge, there's going to be a world leader, and this is just going to grow for years and years at astonishingly high rates, and Fanuc might be one of the most interesting bets in that regard.
Understood. Lockheed.
Yes, Lockheed is obviously a weapons manufacturer, very big one. And I am personally convinced that the future of warfare, the future of the battlefield, lies in robotics, at least to a certain extent.
So robot fighting robot.
Or robot fighting human. And we already have the drones. Drones are robots at the end of the day. And now if you imagined if someone went to President-elect Trump and told him, you know, Mr. Trump, would you like to deploy a battalion of battle robots to the Middle East to rip the head off ISIS, and you wouldn't even have to risk American lives? Of course they would go for it. And the Americans have the budget, the military budget, they have the technology, and they have companies like Lockheed already working on battle robots. And I went to a lab in Japan where the engineers had a mock-up battlefield in their laboratory where robots were modeled to fight against each other. It was toys based, it was a gimmick, but it goes to show, you know, all of this.
Actually, people are thinking about it.
Starting to happen. People are thinking about it. Very serious people are thinking about it, and these companies are working on it.
Wow. Now, in terms of, we're running out of time, closing thoughts?
Well, why don't we leave that to Mr. Tomita, the Chief Technology Officer of the Robot Hotel. I think he made a very good closing statement. So in the future, you probably see a robot in every household, right?
Of course, sure. No doubt.
Fascinating stuff. So when are we going to see you next?
Next week, I'm going to have some updates about our big event in March. There's some exciting news.
There was a big headline, wasn't there, which we'll save
Yes,
next
we
week.
have Fidelity Investment as headline sponsor. I think that's a major leap forward for us, and also gives us very exciting content. And I can tell you a bit more about that next week.
Sven, as always, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.